more corporate grinding. Yes, the wheel goes on and on and on and on. It does it every single company that you go to. It's incredible when you drive down the street, you pass a store. It looks just like a building, like any other building, but inside that building, there's an entire unit of activity with people that are employees running around for the current crisis to sustain that organization as you go through. You don't even know it because you're just driving by, and you may stop in there once, twice a year, whatever, and then you drive by the next building, and that same building that attaches to the first one, there's another unit of activity going on, and people's lives wrap around the whole thing. They're all going through their own version of a corporate grind. In your case, you're looking on the international aspect of it, and the corporate grind actually goes past the scopes of one building. It goes across the whole planet Earth, and sometimes it's multiple buildings in different countries scattered across the entire world. It depends how big the scope is you go through. So we left off talking about different aspects of the vision statement, the mission statement as you go through. We're going to look at the corporate objectives as you go through. We talk about strategic. Strategic is normally planning that's 3 years plus as you go through. Then you sit down and you have tactical plans that really come in, and these come in on the objectives as you go through. We normally talk about tactical planning as plans where you take the big picture, the strategic plans, and break them down into how you're going to accomplish the strategic plans over a 3-year period. Year 1, year 2, year 3 as you go through. We call these corporate objectives. They direct the firm's course of action and the main boundaries, and they all derive from the mission to make certain you continue the existence as you go through. Here's Intel. They have really 4 different objectives based upon the strategic plan, and they plan on accomplishing this in that tactical time period of 1 to 3 years. Defend and extend the core PC and server business. Pretty reasonable. Expand into profitable and related agencies. That's another good idea. Selectively disrupt markets and adapt Intel formula. And then 4, continue to develop go big opportunities. Pretty clear. And if you're going to communicate that throughout the whole organization, there's really, since they're simple, they're clear, they're direct, they're concise, it really helps that to communicate throughout the entire ranks of the organization. Where does Intel want to go? Here's the 4 things we want to go. And these are all derived from our mission. And you keep on going down the line as you go through. Vision drives mission, drives values, drives objectives, values, goals. So you look on the vision, mission, values, big picture, all part of your strategic plan. Your objectives are part of your tactical plan, 1 to 3 years. Your goals end up being operational plans, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, which really is 1 year and less as you go through. So quantify the objectives. You really want, if you can, and once you have the objectives defined, try to define them more specifically into percentages as you go through. If you wanted to sit down, defend and extend the core PC and server businesses, how big is currently Intel's core PC and server businesses? And how big do you want to extend it to as you go through? Obviously, you want to keep it because you're defending, and you want to extend it so they have a 12% market share. How much is your objective you want to extend it to? Do you want to go to 15 or 16%? That should be, if you get to dive deeper into your objectives, add the numbers as you go through, put numbers right to the objective as to how much you want it, and quantify it as you go through. It becomes more specific as you dive down into the operational level or the 1 year and less. This year, we're at 12%. Our goal is to increase in the first year of our 3 years as we go through, because our tactical plan is a 3-year unit. Okay, so our first year, we want to go from 12 to 14% this year. Here's how we plan on doing it. And you lay out then you lay out your goals as you go through the process. Strategic plans, 3+ years, tactical 1 to 3 years, and then that leads to your objectives as you go through. Your operational plans is 1 year as you go through, and those are your goals in the process. So formulate the strategies, look on the opposing forces in the international market. There's different opportunities because you're not dealing with just a homogeneous market like you would in the United States. You're really dealing with a huge market with lots of different access to different labor costs, different material costs. So you might be able to reduce costs just by moving into another country and building your product there versus staying in the same country as you go through. You can also adapt to the local market as you go through. So you look at the different strategies. If you're coming from one area, that's a regional strategy, but now look on the big picture of the global strategy as you go through. Look for local adaptation as much as you can. Try to reduce costs, and the opportunity is bigger because you're operating on a bigger scale as you go through, and you'll have some economy in regards to that. So step 6, formulate your strategy as you go through. Home replication sometimes is great in the home country. It may be different as you go into multiple different domestic strategies, because you may go down to the Brazil market, you may go into the Indonesian market, you may go to the Europe market as you go through. And each one, you have to adapt your strategy and maybe have a regional strategy that articulates or coordinates with your central strategy as an organization as you go through. So, and a global strategy, it works when the company faces strong pressures for cost reduction, and that also gives you more incentive to go out and find different ways to obtain resources as well as labor to reduce your overall costs. A transnational strategy, it becomes effective when you have cost reduction and local adaptation, and all of a sudden your product and your services all of a sudden become premier items in the country that you're in, and people start flocking to them because you found a unique niche where they're valued as you go through. Here's KFC, except it's over in China. When I was over in Egypt, we went through, and in downtown Cairo, if you want to take your date to a really good thing, a young man, you want to take your date out, 2 places you want to go to. You either went to Pizza Hut or KFC. Seriously. They were the top things. There were limousines dropping people off at KFC because it's an American restaurant and it's really cool. Sometimes you sit down and you think about just KFC. Well, it might be a big deal in other parts of the world because that KFC had lines up and down the block every single night of the week as you went through. It was a huge thing. And frankly, if the franchisee there had an opportunity, they should open up multiple branches. They would sit down there, make a wonderful revenue stream as you went through. Regional strategies, standardization is common in research and development, but it's not always effective in your strategy because of the fact that you're dealing with a different culture, different traditions as you go through. Sometimes there's uncontrollable variables that then inject themselves into your process. So always your regional people that are in charge, listen to them as you go through. And maybe if you're the one in charge, you need to sit down and have your voice spoken to make certain you're successful as you go through. Here's typical steps for scenario planning. Determine area, scope, and timing. Research the condition and trends in that area. Examine the key factors of the drivers that are going to determine the stories you're beginning to build to sell your product or services as you go through. Construct multiple stories as you go through. Typically, whenever I build a budget, I look at 3 different scenarios. Here's what I expect. Here's what will happen if we're financially successful and have lots of money. And here's what happened in case we don't have enough and I have to cut. I typically always build 3. You tell your boss about what you expect and have the backup plans just in case as you go through. The same is true whenever you're in another country. Build multiple plans. So you can flip, flip, flip. If you need to get formal approval from the boss, make certain the boss knows about the plans ahead of time in case this is going really bad. I want to switch to plan B. Okay, approved, plan B. And boom, you can shift on the spur of the moment to plan B because plan A wasn't working. So make certain you have multiple plans ready to go. Examine your answers, look for actions and decisions you made that were common to 2 or 3 of the stories that you built as you go through and the multiple plans, and monitor what does develop, and that way you can sit down there and respond appropriately. Regional strategies for completing globally is always a really big thing. Always have multiple scenarios as you go through, and make certain your tactical plans have multiple alternatives with detail spelled out as you go through. Also, the next step after tactical is the 1 year or less plans called operational plans as you go through. Keep this in mind. Vision drives mission, drives values. We use that for strategic planning. Objectives, they drive tactical plans, which are 1 to 3 years in length. And then finally, the goals, they're operational plans of 1 year and less. They all drive from the top strategic plans as you go through of vision, mission, and values as you go through. Take care.